Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point. 888-589-8840, number to call if you would like to join the conversation. Talk about anything we've talked about over the course of this hour. Creation versus evolution. Irreplaceable role of dads in life. Observations about Barack Obama's statement that he wished he had a father around, and then turns right around and is enthusiastic about supporting lesbian parenthood, which creates environments in which precious, vulnerable young children grow up without a father, deliberately creating these households. And to me, that's a form of child abuse. That's a form of cruelty. If you know from all the things that science tells us that children need both a mother and a father, you know that. You know that's the optimal nurturing environment for them. You know that's what children need. And you deliberately go about pursuing public policy that creates households with a missing mother or a missing father, I tell you that's a form of child abuse. You are deliberately depriving those children of something that everybody knows that they need, the input, the impact of both a mother and a father. And you look at discipline. I want to go back to that discipline thing. Probably in our family, I was the more merciful one. Debbie was sort of Attila the Huntress when it came to discipline with our kids. I mean, they knew that mom was going to go for the spanking spoon, and it was not an idle threat. So I probably tended to have a little bit more mercy with our kids. But I'll tell you one thing, Deb and I were lockstep on discipline. We had an approach to discipline with our kids. We stuck to it. We were very consistent in the application of that discipline. We used a wooden spoon so they didn't associate discipline with our hands, but with an object. We always made sure they knew why they were being disciplined. It wasn't just out of our anger. It's because they had willfully disobeyed a known standard in the household, and we made them tell us what they'd done. We made them tell us what the standard was, so it was very clear to them that the discipline was for violating, was for willful disobedience, not an accident. We didn't discipline them for accident, for just childish immaturity. We just disciplined them for willful disobedience. That was very helpful, by the way, in my marriage when Debbie, dealing with me, came to understand the difference between willful disobedience and childish immaturity and irresponsibility. That was enormous help. But anyway, so we were very consistent. We were on the same page all the way along. We always made sure that the parent who administered the discipline was also the parent that administered the comfort. We didn't want a child to be disciplined by a parent and then run off to the other parent to be cuddled and embraced and sort of comforted. And some of the sweetest times, Debbie will say the same thing, some of the sweetest times, we ever had, and this is for kids when they're young, I mean, under the age of 8 or whatever. But some of the sweetest times we had with our kids was comforting them after we'd been forced to discipline them. Boy, they would just kind of crumple into your chest, and they would cry, and the tears would eventually begin to subside, and they were just kind of collapsed right into your embrace, and they wanted that reassurance, and they wanted that comfort, and we always told them how much we loved them. Our approach with our kids was never to say to them, I love you, but I have to discipline you. It was always, because I love you, I must discipline you. I care too much about you and your development in order to not to discipline you, because this is a pattern, this is a behavior, this is the kind of decision, if it's not corrected, can cause you enormous pain later in your life, and I have a responsibility to give you the best shot of becoming a fully mature and responsible adult as I can. All right, well, let's go. And by the way, the Parenting Works, this Brad Wilcox goes through the consequences in the lives of children when they've got an engaged father, that is a father who loves adolescent boys or girls, is engaged in their lives. They're in an intact home where the father is still married to the mother. So you got an intact home, mom and a dad of those kids married to each other, and the dad's involved with his kids. He loves them and they know it. The delinquency rate among boys is one half what it is in other environments. Teenage pregnancy rates among girls is half what it is in other environments. And the rate of depression for both boys and girls is less than half of what it is in other environments. So our kids, guys, need both a mom and a dad. So let's continue to do our part. Never think, dads, that you are dispensable, disposable. You are absolutely critical and essential to the development of your children, your daughters and your sons. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to David in West Lafayette, Indiana. David, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian.
Hey.
It's always a blessing to hear you on the radio, and you are a force for this country.
Well, thank you very much. That's kind of you. Very kind of you.
Basically, what I wanted to say is I agree with you on the family issue because dad is such an important role, like my father was when I was a child, like I am with my child. What upsets me is a place where I work at. I won't say where I work at, but they promote same-sex marriage partners or whatever you call it, and they'll come in. One person will say, well, daddy will go do this, and the child just kind of looks around and they're kind of confused, and it's kind of hurtful. You can see it in their eyes.
Yeah, it's confusing and to them, and it's painful for them.
Yeah, and I totally agree with the creation part. People need to get out and stand strong with God and say, hey, we were created. The Bible says one man, one woman, and it upsets me. Of course, Barack Obama, he's been doing all these things to us and everything, and then promoting the same-sex thing. The only thing I would say to him would be put a man and a woman, a couple of couples someplace, and a couple of same-sex partners together and see who can come up with children. So,
All right, David. Well, thank you for the call. That's an escapable fact of biology, is that homosexuals obviously cannot reproduce, and so they have to recruit. I mean, that's what we need to understand. It's not rocket science to go back to Wernher von Braun. Homosexuals cannot reproduce. It's biologically impossible for them to reproduce. So they must recruit. And that's why it becomes so important that you make sure that you do not have male adult homosexuals in positions of influence over vulnerable young children. All right, let's go to, and to go back to what Dave was saying earlier, the number one reason, if you want just one reason, I mean, there's a host of reasons to oppose same-sex marriage. If you want just one reason, make it children. I care too much about the welfare of children to support same-sex marriage. I love children too much to support same-sex marriage. I care too much about the environment in which vulnerable young children grow up to support same-sex marriage. All right, let's go to Morgan, Memphis, Tennessee. Morgan, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hi, I was just, I'm driving here on I-40 in between Memphis and Nashville. I teach science over in the Arkansas Delta, and you were talking a little bit about that evolution stuff there.
Yeah.
And I have to say, so I don't really agree with a lot of what you said there, and I have a few things that I wanted to discuss with you.
All right.
You mentioned that you equated the idea of atomic theory and subatomic particles to God and to a creator.
Well, Wernher von Braun was doing that, not me.
Okay, well, I mean, I think it's safe to say that you at least agreed with it.
Sure.
Because you were espousing it.
Well, he's smart. Morgan, he's a lot smarter than both of us, so yeah, I agree with him.
Well, yeah, and he also got a few things wrong, such as, his affiliation with the Nazis. So he wasn't a perfect guy. He may have been a very intelligent man. But back to what we're talking about here. Science goes about collecting information, and it's basically an exercise in model making. You do your experiments, you make your observations,
right?
And then you update your model of reality.
Gotcha. And there's two models, Morgan, of the origin of all things. There's the creationist model and the evolutionary model, and I think it's worth taking both those models, putting them side by side, take what we know to be true scientifically, which of these two models best fits what we absolutely know to be true scientifically.
Okay. I mean, I totally agree with you on that.
Okay.
And it's very clear the scientific consensus across the entire world, echoes the theory of Darwinian
Whoa,
evolution.
wait. Hold it, Morgan. Hold it. Forget this consensus business.
Hold it for as long as you need to, sir. Just go ahead.
Morgan, science does not proceed on the basis of consensus. You ought to know that. Science is not about consensus. Science is about objective fact. It's about testable hypotheses. It's about what you can reproduce in the laboratory. Morgan, if science progressed on the basis of consensus, Galileo would have had his head cut off, and we'd still think that the Earth, that the sun revolves around the Earth. Science does not, Morgan, hold it, Morgan. Science does not proceed on the basis of consensus. Consensus has absolutely nothing to do with the scientific method.
The last part of the scientific method, as it's taught in classrooms, is to communicate your evidence and debate your evidence and evaluate its merits.
Yeah, but consensus. But hold it, Morgan. Consensus is not evidence.
That's true, but consensus is agreed on by looking at evidence.
But Morgan, hold it. You got to stop right there, my friend. This is where you're going wrong. This is where you're completely wrong by thinking that consensus is the same thing as science. It's not. I mean, all of the global warming experts were telling us that man was causing global warming. And more CO2, more global warming. We have not had a stitch of global warming, Morgan, in 17 years and 4 months.
Oh,
despite all of this consensus,
I'm currently driving right now, so I can't really go back to any results that are in front of me. But you got to watch what you're saying there, because that is a flat out untruth.
Well, Morgan, what I'm saying is the consensus was CO2 causes global warming. We've had CO2 going through the roof for 17 years. Global warming is completely flatlined. I mean, the consensus is absolutely dead flat wrong. And you, as somebody who claims to be committed to science, you ought to know better than that, my friend. Now, can you stick around, Morgan, for the... Can you wait 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure, I'll wait.
Okay, well, why don't we continue this conversation after the news? You are listening to Focal Point on AFR Talk. I'll continue my conversation with Morgan after the news. Stay with us.